Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I want to talk about panic. I want to talk about anxiety. I want to talk about when things trigger you, how do you keep calm and carry on? And so I was thinking, who could I bring on to the podcast that can help simplify what is a very loaded and very big conversation? My special guest today is Roger Jackson. He's a qualified somatic experiencing practitioner and an Esalen massage therapist. He's the director of Oasis School of Massage and Healing Arts in Buenos Aires and is also a faculty member of the Spazio School of Californian Massage in Spain. Now, he's got a degree in philosophy and he's also trained in yoga and many other meditative practices. So I can't think of a better person to really dive deep into this besides Roger. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Roger Jackson. Hey, Roger.
Hi, Mary.
I'm so pleased that you're here. And I feel like this is a topic that, some may say, well, how does that relate to my business? How does that relate to me being a great business owner or a leader in my work? And the reality is it does. It is everything to do with how you live your life and, take responsibility for your health and things beyond. But why is that important? Why do you think that's important for a business leader, learning how to keep calm and carry on?
I think it's a great question. I run a business myself, and what I find is the more calm I maintain throughout any of the chaotic moments that get thrown up in a standard week, it just helps keep everybody on track, and it helps give everybody else a bit of a guideline of where to find trust and where to find a sensation of safety. I think that if we can find a sensation of safety within ourselves and allow that to kind of radiate just from us, those people around us, they drop into that resonance with us. Mm-hmm. I've learned from many mistakes in my time, and I've learned from many mistakes of just reacting very quickly to an event and not giving myself time to actually recenter myself. Yeah. And I've seen what effect that has on the people that work with me.
Yeah.
I've really come to learn, partly through my mistakes, which I think is one of the best ways we have of learning, and partly just through studying and growing, that if the calmer I can keep myself, the more I will act as a regulating factor for those employees that I may have, or the people, my clients, or the people that I'm working with.
Yeah. It ripples out, right? The energy ripples out. Yeah.
Exactly. It just resonates. There's something that just resonates. Mm-hmm. And I think that resonation, I'm not sure if that's even a word, that resonating is also a big part of what just helps keep our social bonds together, which is very much the gel of most small businesses, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I know a lot of our listeners are either solopreneurs with a handful of virtual assistants, or maybe they've got a small team of 5 people working around the country. And I think that this is part of being a great leader, is being a great communicator. But like, as you say, it's also being a great regulator of your emotions and tensions. So when things do get triggering, when somebody does send that really crass email or something happens that puts you at high alert, that you're able to calm first and then react second, not react first, right?
Yeah, I think that's key. I think not only that, but actually just being able to recognize that I'm in a reactive state, recognize, okay, I'm furious, and be able to actually put your finger on it and recognize that, okay, this is me when I feel angry, or this is me when I feel like I've just shut down. Yeah. And really take time through whatever the means that each one of us has to be able to regulate our state, to work through that sensation, emotion, reaction, that trigger, until we're back in a more centered space. Because once we are centered, and this is another great thing that I've learned, once we are centered, we'll normally choose the right thing. Yeah. And often when we're in a reactive space or a shut down space, we will choose things that are not beneficial to ourselves, to our clients, to our businesses. Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say that this is in line with the kind of flight, fight, or freeze responses to situations of high anxiety.
Yeah, exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's the perfect step into polyvagal theory, which is it's kind of the vanguard right now of neurophysiology in terms of understanding how we react to situations of safety or lack of safety as well, perceived dangers. So our first response mechanism will always be based on social engagement. It's the highest. So we'll try and talk out the problem. We'll try and, this is assuming that we're in the problematic side.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a danger. The first thing I will try and do is I will try and think about it and try and talk about it.
Yep.
Now, if I can't resolve it instantly, or if something triggers an old reaction in me, I'm going to drop down into the next neurophysiological kind of hierarchical layer. The second layer down in the hierarchy is the fight-flight.
Yeah.
So the first reaction, I prepare myself to fight. My body, my arms and my legs are going to feel very energetic.
Yep.
I personally find myself walking around the office or walking around the room or when that kicks in. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will recognize that state in themselves. Or you too, Mary.
Yep.
Before we did this, I was feeling the nervousness of being about to record something.
Yeah.
I washed the dishes. It's just a very simple, slightly meditative, but it's something which gets, so it's actually a form of releasing that fight mechanism in this case.
Yeah.
It's just giving it a way of just discharging.
Yeah.
So if we're not being able to resolve or react, this will drop down into what you called the freeze state. This state of really a way of maintaining our energy levels for a long time. So it's the energy, we call it freeze. We see it in animals when they play dead. And I think often the most simple thing, I was talking to a client yesterday about this, when we just, perhaps something gets heated and we find that rather than being able to hold that level of intensity, perhaps if we're negotiating, we collapse down.
Yeah.
And we just kind of give in. That's a very day-to-day way of seeing how that freeze state kicks in. We just kind of collapse out of tension. So I mean, this is just the basic hierarchical order of how those three structures or three parts of the nervous system fit together. This was put forward by Stephen Porges.
Yep.
It's called the polyvagal theory.
Yeah.
Now I find that if we actually start noticing these somatic sensations of the felt sense, then we start to get a much better idea. We hear people talk all the time about feeling the body or being in contact with the body.
Yep.
And it really is that simple and that difficult as just feeling what's going on.
And
for a lot of us,
is it a matter of, in that moment, really just checking in, where am I feeling it? Am I feeling it in my throat? Am I feeling it in my digestive system? Am I feeling it in, tinglings in my fingers? Is it that kind of level of physical connection and touching base?
Yeah, it definitely can be. Often I find that if I'm just in the midst of, if I've been triggered by something, it's often just a case of, just what's the global sensation?
Yep.
What do I feel right now?
Yep.
And often the predominant sensation is I feel angry. It's the emotion that we spot first a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can drop down into the felt senses, as you were saying, focus in on specific areas, then we do get to see a more graded valuing of what's going on. So perhaps we might notice, you mentioned just a slightly uncomfortable tingling in the hands. This is a light version of the fight response, and a slightly uncomfortable tingling in the feet, or the restless leg syndrome.
Yep.
This is, I don't want to talk too much about syndromes because it's more complicated than that, but this is the non-discharged energy of the flight reaction. So if we start just noticing this, I will always notice that if I'm in a tense moment in the office and I'm trying to resolve things, then I'll just walk. I walk and I walk and I walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll normally walk until I've helped release that. But if I don't walk, then the tension remains much higher for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's often just finding ways for each one of us on our day-to-day thing, just what works for us. What helps me regulate. And when I say regulate, I'm talking about just coming from any of these reactions, the freeze, the fight, the flight, just back into social connection, back into the sensation of, okay, I feel like myself, I feel centered, I feel powerful, I feel like I can take decisions, I feel like I can communicate again.
Yeah.
It's generally the sensation of feeling me. We relate this feeling of social connection to just the feeling of being me.
And I hear that, and the way I translate it is the reality is a lot of us these days, we work in isolation. We work hunched over our laptop for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, sort of in our own little bubble, doing our own little thing. And then something bing pops up as either a notification or an angry email or whatever. And, then it goes, ooh, I feel it. Like I feel it goes right up into my throat. And how I translate that is not to react immediately. Don't make bad decisions in a high state of anxiety and triggered and all of that. But actually, for me, when I remove myself from the situation, not flying away as in a way of like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, but actually going, you know what? It's really empowering when I pull myself out of the hunched over the laptop about to write the angry email and say, right, what am I going to do to pause, breathe, reflect, and get back to center, right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to Carl Jung, the talk of the witness, the witness space, the part of us which is capable of recognizing what's going on in our external world and in our internal reaction to that. And I think that's vital when we have that just ability and it's often just a second, it's just stopping, well, it's slightly more than a second, but it's not long, just stopping and just noticing what's happening.
Yep. Yeah. Like, is there a few questions that we could think about or run through in that moment of trying to check in with ourselves? What would you ask yourself in that?
What am I feeling?
Yeah.
That would be my first question. That's the biggest question. What am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What do I feel? And, for each one of us, it's often easier for us to feel certain things and often easier for us to allow ourselves to feel certain things.
Yeah.
This is something that I had to work on for a period of time. I had to really work on allowing myself to feel anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a long time, as soon as I felt angry, I wouldn't know what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to tune into it. So it really took me a while to start working out, what does anger feel like?
Yeah.
And so when I did start noticing it, I started realizing, oh, my shoulders come up, just as you showed earlier. My hands suddenly feel more restless. I suddenly find myself fidgeting and grabbing things and moving things around.
Yeah.
And so with time, if suddenly I felt something was off, I'd stop and I'd just drop in. So what am I feeling right now? And instantly I start noticing, my hands have that feeling. And I'd often start working the opposite way around to what I said the first time. So I'd notice first the felt sense. My hands feel tight. And as I drop into the sensation of my hands feel tight, I feel really angry.
Yeah.
So, and there are certain sets, and perhaps this is useful for everybody to know. There are certain combinations of sensations in the body which really help us spot certain emotions, certain reactions. So is that useful for you if we go into those?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, I think one of the biggest reactions, as you were suggested, the angry email comes in, is the anger response.
Yep.
Now, when that comes in, the typical thing, the shoulders will come up as part of a defensive posture so that we cannot be attacked from behind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Our shoulders will come up. Our jaws will tense because they start getting ready to bite. This is one of our most our strongest weapons.
Yeah.
So this is old. This is centuries and centuries. This is millions of years old. This response.
Right.
We're talking about 3 million, I think, 3.5 million years old. This response. So we get an email and our jaws tense. Many people suffer from I think it's called bruxism in English. So many people, they find themselves biting at night, biting down, damaging their teeth at night. And this is all very much non-discharged, sympathetic fight response. So people are literally preparing to bite other people, or bite, the aggressor of the email.
Right.
Not something I would recommend. But,
right.
So, I mean, this and the other one is we'll find ourselves clenching our fists. We're preparing to fight, literally. And finally, the temperature, our body temperature, will normally rise. We'll start sweating more. The sweating response I think this is amazing. It's if we're sweating and if in a fight, if somebody grabs us, they won't be able to grab so easily, and they're more likely to slide off us. So we're often sitting at a desk in modern world, and our body temperature rises, and we've got fists, and we're biting.
Yeah.
So we have all the response, but we're not living anymore in a world where we can be fighting. So that response is slightly archaic almost, but that's how we work still. We still have that fight response.
And isn't it fascinating that our bodies are just naturally doing that? Like you're not like thinking in your mind, "Ooh, I better clench up. Ooh, I better start sweating. Ooh, I better," like it's just doing it naturally because that's what our bodies and our human DNA is used to. But it's a matter of retraining the brain. It's a matter of retraining our responses to these high stress moments, right? And knowing to get back into alignment. That's where the power is. And it takes time.
Yeah. And I would say it's not just that. I agree with all of that, but it's not just that. It's also vindicating the sensations.
Yeah.
It's also giving us the okay to get angry.
Yeah.
Giving us the okay to say, because our anger is also our limit of what's okay and what's not okay. This is how we divide between, what feels right in the world. We make these moral judgments based on these sensations.
Yeah.
So we'll often meet somebody and our whole body will just kind of close up in defense. And it's not a conscious thing. It's part of the autonomic nervous system. But we're checking that person out. Something from their whole field is being picked up on, and we're responding to them. And this is fascinating.
Yeah.
And this is something that, I studied philosophy. It was a very intellectual approach. And it was after I finished that I had longing into something of more somatic wisdom. And I started training with massage, with conscious touch. I started learning about yoga. And the thing that I fell in love with the most was the fact that the body does not lie. The body cannot lie. So people can tell you how they are, but you can see, the somatic reactions of actually how they're feeling all the time.
Yeah.
So in terms of, if we're running our own business, if we're working with other people, if we can actually harness these things to our favor. So it's not just a case of, oh, this has triggered me, I need to re-regulate, which is, a lot of the time I would say never take a decision until you've gone back to the center, until you've come back into social connection.
Right.
But really vindicate these sensations. We're struggling, I think, in the society in general with a kind of a devaluation of anger and of aggression. There's a very healthy kind of aggression, it's often linked directly to the idea of violence. And there is a huge gap of really positive aggression to play with before we start getting into the abusive aggression where that becomes violence.
Right.
And I think often it's very healthy to show a little bit of aggression, to help, again, looking at running a business. It's really healthy sometimes to show some of that aggression about what's not okay.
Right. And that's boundaries. So that's communicating boundaries.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But I also wonder...
This is how we mark what's okay and what's not.
Yeah. And I also wonder, it makes me think as well. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur of 16 years, and part of what's in my DNA as a business owner is that I'm an ideas person, and I generate so many ideas from so many new businesses that could come to life. But one of the things that I think is interesting when I think about anger is what things in the world aggravate me, what things frustrate me, what things are really a struggle for my clients and for myself, and how can I create products and services that solve that. So that's, in my mind, that's channeling the anger and aggravation into something positive as well. Like, whoa, what if we offered this? What if we, I don't know, donated 5% of our profits to this charity that's providing clean water? I mean, that's a way to use the anger for good, right?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I think it's a very old idea, this idea that we grow through problems.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been said much more eloquently by greater people than myself. But the very simple idea that we find ourselves confronted with a problem, confronted with something chaotic, something that's not functioning.
Yeah.
And if we can take the time to recenter and really give ourselves time to think about that, then we can normally reorder that in a new way.
Right. And you and I spoke before this about, the simple question sometimes also is to asking, when you're checking in with your body and trying to figure out what it's telling us, is, are you comfortable or uncomfortable as well?
Yeah.
Can you speak more into that?
Yeah. If I could, just before going to that, I would actually like to go to the other response, which is very common, because we spoke about the sympathetic, give it a mention at least, which is when we do drop down into this, we called it freeze state here. It's not exactly that, but it's close enough for us to understand. So when we drop down into this state, the immediate thing that we notice is just a lack of physicality, a lack of strength. There's an immediate sensation of not having the strength to keep your back straight. The sensation of the legs giving way is a very common one, like that knees giving way. It's very common for cold to appear throughout the body. Suddenly I'm feeling colder than normal, low energy. Suddenly it feels harder to connect with other people. Even things like our eyesight decrease in their clarity, and our hearing, we have very tiny little muscles in the middle ear which actually close down as part of a defense system. It's something that's shared with the lions, for example. When a lion roars, it shuts them as a self-protection.
Wow.
So when we drop into that same state, into that kind of shutdown state, we close the ears, the inner ears. So we can't really communicate as well. We don't hear people as easily. We don't see people as easily.
Yeah.
So again, if we're trying to hold a leadership role and we're in this state which does not promote communication,
right?
As you said, being a leader, communication is one of the biggest things, and from that state, communication is almost impossible. So that's the kind of moment when we have to pull ourselves back, and this is a great thing. Often, just telling people, you know what, I don't feel great right now. Just give me a moment and I'll be back. Just so that people know. Because otherwise often people will get triggered. They'll see you shut down and they'll go, oh, why have they shut down? Perhaps it's because I did not do something correct. And so it starts creating a chain of reactions.
Right, because then they go into fight, flight, or freeze as well, right?
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you get a very toxic situation very quickly.
Right.
And as I said at the beginning, we look to our leaders. We call them leaders. People that lead us, and the state of our nervous system is a big part of that.
Yeah.
So if we do feel like we're dropping out, like we're reacting or anything, it's great to be able to tell people, just say, please, just give me a moment.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling myself. I'm just not on it. Just give me a moment and I'll be back shortly.
Yeah.
Someone that needs an answer, give me a moment. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Yeah. And
just so that they
maybe backing that up and saying to them, give me a moment. And I believe this is important and I want to come back to you.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
Not, I just need a moment. It's like, I need a moment and this is important to me. So that they feel seen and heard and not abandoned in that moment.
Definitely. Because if we try and share from that place, it will almost always not work out quite how we wanted.
Yeah.
That's the one big thing I've learned never try and carry on from a reactive place.
Yeah.
Always take a moment, and there are different tricks to that. There are different ways we can kind of get ourselves recentered. But often big things happen. People that we love die, and it really, we get massive tragedies come through our lives, and we have to still carry on running a business. And,
Yeah. Yeah, I can think of a couple of examples to that in my own personal life. One in particular, I'll make it quick. You were talking about having your fists clenched as a sort of a natural reaction. We were remodeling our kitchen a few years ago, and one of the builders had an accident and sliced a chunk of his thumb off. It was just this horrific experience, and I'm there, and I, call the ambulance, and it's just nightmare city, right? There ended up being an Easter egg hunt to try to find his thumb in the front lawn. I won that Easter egg hunt. Not a good thing. But I remember in my body, we got him to safety and he was absolutely fine. But I remember in my body in that moment, very much a panic, but also very much in like go mode. Like when I get really stressed, I go very quiet and I am very focused. But the days after that, my thumbs, both of them, hurt so much. Like I just both of them, even right now talking about this makes my thumb hurt. And it's so fascinating that our bodies are like that. They're built to empathize for other people's pain and struggles as well. And so it takes time to clear that, not only in the moment of panic, but then also, in the days leading afterwards. Ugh, it's the worst, Roger.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a nice story.
No.
Let's shake that one off.
Horrible.
I don't know whether your thumbs were hurting because you were empathizing or whether you yourself were holding tension in your hands as a reaction to that moment. That's something that...
I think it was both, for sure.
Maybe.
For sure. So getting back to checking in with your body and like what your body's trying to tell you. So comfortable versus uncomfortable.
Comfortable, uncomfortable. I think, this was a real wake-up call for me discovering this.
Yeah. And it's so simple, but it's, tell me more.
It's so simple and it's so difficult. General rule of thumb. Sorry, I'm bringing up thumbs again.
You're triggering me.
So a general rule of life, we'll change it so that we don't trigger so much. General rule of life. That which is comfortable in our body will be leading us towards regulation of the nervous system, which means we will be feeling more sensations of security, of safety, of well-being, and we will literally be setting our body up so that it's working in its most effective way, bringing us back to homeostasis. So it's maximizing the possible health of the body. Whenever we drop down to the other systems, it's much harder for them to survive. It's much more costly. So comfortable, generally speaking, will mean regulated. And generally speaking, uncomfortable will mean we're going towards dysregulation.
Yeah.
And this is very black and white. It really is quite black and white. And we'll often find that it's a global sensation. I'm all comfortable and all uncomfortable. But most of the time, we'll have parts of our body that are comfortable and parts that are uncomfortable. Now, this is black and white. And we can look at this and we can say, okay, this is uncomfortable, this is comfortable. But on top of that, we have a filter, which is very much it's a prefrontal cortex filter, which allows us to then put value judgments on it. So often I'll feel uncomfortable, but I'll already know that I can deal with that level of uncomfortable. And so I'll say to someone, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But I'm actually uncomfortable, but I can deal with it, So these are the two different things to look at, comfortable or uncomfortable, and to start really checking in with the felt sense. So what do I feel in my body? So, I'll often ask people that come to work with me when they first start to, what do you feel in your body? And they'll say, oh, yeah, fine. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Well, what's that like? What's fine like? Where do you feel fine?
Yeah.
Oh, my chest feels fine. Okay. What does your chest feel like? And people have no idea how to respond.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. And it's a case of checking in. So, if I check in now, what do I feel? And the first thing I notice is I feel the weight of my arms dropping really comfortably just here on the desk. I actually feel a little bit of tension in my breathing now that I stop and I feel it. And as soon as I mention it, that just opens slightly. And as it opens, it's slightly more comfortable. We can really spend a lot of time checking in with all the different felt senses of the body. There's all sorts of things going on at the same time.
Yeah.
But if we can start recognizing comfortable or uncomfortable as a first step, that will often then allow us to take the next step, which is to work out often what caused this or where's this come from. For me, at least, I'll often find myself angry and I'm not even sure, or frustrated, and I'm not even quite sure why I'm feeling like that. And it's often through the body up that I start working out all the answers.
And I
don't know if that's something that rings true to you.
100%. And what it makes me think as well is, why not test this at your next team meeting? You know, next Monday morning when you're all sitting around the table, let's just have a moment to 5 minutes, check in, comfortable, uncomfortable, sit down, let people really get back into their body, or do it in your family. Do it, you know, at the dinner table at dinner tonight, and just test it and see what comes up. You know, children are always so hearts wide open and receptive to things. They'll love playing a game like that. But I think we as adults sometimes, do you know what we do? I'll be the first to admit it. We numb. We go straight for the coffee, or maybe early 20s Mary would have gone straight for an energy drink or a sugary snack and go, well, you know, I'm just really busy right now, so I deserve that thing, and that will help me get through and power through the morning, right? And the reality is we disassociate from our bodies. We disassociate from the pain point. And then I think also, which is really interesting, and I'm 42, so I'm still very young, but I'm also learning things about my body now that I never knew 20 years ago, was that your body also starts to be okay with the discomfort, and then other parts of the body starts to kind of cope where the pain is. For example, I had a tailbone injury about 3 years ago, and going too fast one morning and slipped on the stairs, bam, right on my bottom. And, you know, what is interesting, as the healing has occurred, that tailbone injury threw my body a little out of whack. So that started translating down to my right knee, which translated down to my left ankle, which translated, you know, to tension in my shoulders. And it's interesting, like you say that, you know, oh, I feel fine. That's what I probably would say. I feel fine. But the reality is, oh yeah, there's all these other things that my body's trying to do to cope with that discomfort.
Yeah. I mean, I think that example precisely is, you know, is very possibly more to do with the structural integration of the system, rather than the nervous system.
Sure.
I mean, they're often interlinked. There'll often be a little bit of both worlds all combined together.
Yeah.
But I think this is exactly right what you've said. You know, we numb as a safety response, because what we're going through is too uncomfortable to deal with, or we don't know how to deal with it, or we don't have the resources to deal with it yet. So it's kind of like just putting it under the carpet to deal with it another day.
Yeah.
You know, or stuffing it at the back of the cupboard.
And that might make us calm in the short term, but in reality, long term, sustainable calm is not found there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a dual process with any kind of somatic therapy, at least, you know, which is, on the one hand, we can learn to regulate states. So, you know, we go from uncomfortable and unsafe to comfortable and safe.
Yep.
That's one thing, which is great. And at the same time, all of those things that make us uncomfortable, at some point we need to go down into those things, and we need to see how we can transform, move, release, discharge those energies. The example that you said about, you know, just dropping in the board table, or dropping in at work with the people there, just how are we feeling? I'm sure for some people it will be, you know, quite a fun and easy task, because they'll drop into nice sensations in the body.
Yep.
For some people it will be incredibly uncomfortable, because they immediately drop into uncomfortable things, and that could even be triggering as well.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be very careful about how you do something like that. And finally, there will be people that really cannot connect, because if they do connect, the level of pain, of discomfort, of probably sadness is so great that it will kind of bubble over and just leave them. It's it's like it's untouchable. That's the sensation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the further along this scale into this kind of frozen, disassociated state, the further along you are into that, the slower you can come out of it. You have to really go in. You have to use titration. You go in drop by drop, just making contact and starting to find how can you really find some comfort,
Yeah.
some regulation on the one hand, and at the same time start to go into all these different problems that have led to this state.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking of the people listening to your podcast, and working in small businesses, I think anything that's going along the lines of self-regulating exercises, mindfulness exercises, just dropping into the body and focusing a little bit on the more comfortable side,
Right.
is going to be really good. These are things you can really help people to just relax the superficial, just drop down into a more comfortable, more safe, more regulated space. I think if you do it just openly, then probably half the people will drop into comfortable places and half of them will drop into uncomfortable places. But then if you don't have the skills to get out of those places again, it's not going to be ideal.
Yeah.
So I'd say yeah.
Well, let's talk about somatic experiencing then. Let's give people that are listening today a few positive resources that they can help get them back to calm and gain alignment. So first off, define somatic experiencing for people that don't know.
Yeah, somatic experiencing is a type of somatic therapy designed by a great man, a beautiful man called Peter Levine. He had a background in biology. I'm not sure of exactly what branch of biology it was.
Sure.
He also then studied psychology as well. But what he was looking at are how the body holds the responses of trauma and how to release it. So he was studying animals originally, and he was looking at how they react to traumatic experiences or dangerous experiences, how they get into fight-flight states, how they tremble. There's a whole tremble response. So he was looking at that, and he started applying that to us, to humans. This was back in the 70s, I think, that he was really starting this, and this has just grown since then.
Yeah.
And it's just been gaining more and more ground as we understand it and we see how practical it is. And the developments by Stephen Porges of the polyvagal theory really offered a very strong neurophysiological foundation for the work as well. Suddenly everything fitted into a map that made sense. So what we do is we sit with people and we drop into the felt senses. We start to work out comfortable, uncomfortable, start to work out what kind of resilience their nervous systems have.
Yeah.
So then we help just regulate back into social connection on the one hand. And at the same time, we look when there are frozen states, how to come out of that frozen state, come through the sympathetic responses, discharge the different sympathetic responses, and hopefully come back into social connection.
So how I met you was through the togetherness movement down in London.
Yeah.
Adam and those guys, they're beautiful people. And
They are.
were doing a workshop on this kind of stuff. So I remember one of the techniques you had taught us was, if you're in a space of panic and overwhelm or high stress, just simply putting your hands on your face. And that physical touch that actually changes something in your brain and in your body. Tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. So, the actual innovation of the nervous system, of the social engagement system. Mm-hmm. These are nerves that all come from the back of the head here, the cranial nerves, and they come round. The main one is the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve. But the others, they come round to the face. We have the optical nerve, we have the trigeminal nerve. Mm-hmm. So, and they also come down to the larynx, to the pharynx, down to the lungs, the heart, and the diaphragm as well.
Yep.
And also to the digestive system. So all of this is linked together as part of this system. So if we just place our hands on our cheeks, and those people that are listening, perhaps that are not driving,
Yes.
that are in a safe place, they can try just putting their hands on their cheeks and just focusing in on the felt sense of the point of contact between the face and the cheek. And it's generally quite a warm feeling. It's generally quite a kind of homey, secure feeling that it creates. And this is true for almost everybody. Most people feel this. I mean, and I think I mentioned this in the workshop you came to, that in a state of horror, we grab our face. It's a very natural response to a bad event.
Yeah.
So this is a great, biohack. This one here, there's another one, just putting your right hand underneath your left armpit and then wrapping your second hand around. I don't know if you could see me well enough there.
Yeah.
And these are worth trying. If you see that as soon as you do them, it doesn't help or it makes things worse, then don't carry on. Just go to the one that works for you, obviously.
Right.
But often here, just the actual breathing, the feeling the lungs as they move, as the rib cage moves. Sorry, Peter Levine called these first aid.
Yeah.
First aid for trauma responses.
Well, and that one in particular just feels like a warm hug. It feels like my best friend, saying, "You're okay. You're held in this moment, and you're all right."
Exactly.
And I love the fact that you can give that to yourself, like right now, right here, for free. Doesn't require any extra resources, time, or outlay of whatever. It's accessible to you in that moment. And especially, I think, when you're in a high-stress situation and you've got to move fast, to know that these are a couple of new tools in your tool belt that will help bring you back to center and back to calm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another one which is great, I think, like the power of our imagination, of our visualization is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
And there was a wonderful study done on this, where they took 3 groups. They sent one to the gym for an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
They kept other people at home without going to the gym. And the third group of people in the middle, they made them imagine they were going to the gym every day for an hour. And at the end of the week, or the time period that they'd chosen, they weighed people. And obviously the people that had been to the gym had lost a little bit of weight. The people who hadn't done anything had just remained the same.
Yeah.
And the people who had been imagining had also lost a bit of weight, but not as much as the people that had gone to the gym. So the power of our minds to actually affect our biology is staggering.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know this for many things. You imagine a job interview, you remember the story of the builder, instantly the tension comes back. It's just a memory, but the whole body reacts to it. It's somehow coupled together.
Yeah.
So we can use that same thing to our advantage as a regulator. So we can bring into our minds something or someone that really just that we love, or someone that makes us feel good or makes us feel safe, or something we love doing that makes us feel brilliant.
Yeah.
Often with clients, I'll say, what makes you feel powerful? And, I'm surfing. I say, okay, so when just before you're about to give a talk, just take a couple of minutes, or even just 30 seconds, just imagining yourself in your favorite spot surfing, or out on your favorite beach, or hugging your dog, or playing with your dog, or with somebody that you look up to.
Yeah, and I think it's tapping into those 5 senses, really make it a multi-sensory experience for yourself, getting into your happy place or wherever that might be.
Yeah. I mean, I would translate that slightly differently, but I would say, we connect to the positive resource. So, I mean, before I give a session, I would often bring to my mind one of my teachers, someone that I really love and respect. And as soon as I bring her to mind, I feel an instant calm throughout my body. Yeah. And as soon as I feel the calm, then I focus on the calm.
Yeah.
So I use the resource, the positive resource, to create a positive sensation in the body, and then I stay with the positive sensation in the body, the comfortable feeling in the body. So, one thing, it will inspire the other, and then stay with that sensation in the body is what allows us to regulate it.
It makes a lot of sense. So, I hope that if you're listening to this episode, you're going to try these things out today and experiment. And like Roger says, like not everything's going to connect with you and what you want and or need in that moment. So take what you need and scrap the rest. Knowing that you are empowered, that you have a few more tools for your tool belt to help you when you're feeling high stress or you're feeling like up to here with things, that will certainly help. So, Roger, I feel like this is a whole other conversation for maybe a whole other time, but I do want to talk about trauma because whether big or small, things happen in our life unexpectedly. And that trauma is sitting in our bodies and in our hearts, right? Whether it's stemmed from big change or mistakes that are made or anything else. How do we begin to address that trauma and start to heal?
I think it's a very wide question. And I think for a lot of people, it will have different meanings. There are different types of trauma, which we can generally separate them into two groups, which would be more kind of shock trauma, things that really just happen off the bat that weren't expected and just completely shake us up, and often shake up our entire life narrative. And we also have more development trauma, so sustained discomfort, sustained abuse, sustained bad relationships, a lack of security. So the ways of healing them are very different, of these two worlds. But I would say that both of them require us to start finding more areas of comfort in our life. That would be the most important thing as a starting place.
Right.
To start, and I'm not saying that that's the end game, because it's not about just feeling comfortable. If we just feel comfortable, we'd end up living on a big ball of cotton wool at home, which is not the idea. The idea is to be able to have enough resilience. What we're looking for is that comfort gives us enough resiliency that we can kind of go back to rest. So that we can then go out again to confront the world and all the things that we want to achieve and transform, and all the things we want to fight against and improve. And but I think that's probably the biggest thing that I find myself starting with always, is just finding a first base of comfort. And returning those things to your life. So what things do I enjoy doing? Not just enjoy. What things do I enjoy doing that really create comfort in my body? So maybe I have someone that I love talking to, and I've just lost contact. So just restart that relationship. See them once a week. Maybe I've always loved yoga. Go start yoga again. And maybe it's even smaller than that. Maybe it's just finding pleasure in drinking the right drinks that you love drinking. Maybe it's making sure that your bed sheets are clean and you can actually enjoy sleeping in them. It's all these little simple things which start creating it's like creating fertile, safe ground. I often use the analogy of an island. It's like creating a safe island. And from there, you can start swimming out into the trauma of the world. And at any point when you feel like it's getting too much, you come back to the safe island. So that's the first step, I think.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy. And I mean, I think it is your nest. It is your safe space, in whether that's your home or even your office, that you can come back to, slow your pace way, way down, nourish yourself before you go out and tackle and battle your big traumas of life. If all of this sounds intriguing to you, I highly recommend that you check out Roger's website. It's roger-jackson.com. And by the way, all the links are in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com as well. You spend a little bit of time in London, and then you're a very smart boy, and you retreat to Argentina and to Spain and very sunny places. And I wish I could just be in your carry-on luggage with you. But, he is doing this work with his clients in those locations. And if you live anywhere near there, I encourage you to check it out, not only for massage, but for somatic experiencing sessions to help you start to break through and reconnect and get back to center. So, Roger, I have a few questions as we wrap up that I like to ask all of our guests. And thank you so much for your time today. Tell us,
It's my pleasure.
What's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
It's a great question. I'm in a process of reading a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
This week, I am reading a book called Lost Connections. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
No.
By Johann Hari. It's called Why You're Depressed and How to Find Hope. I've got it here just next to me. It's a very interesting book. And I'm also reading Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. And I would say that is a book, that's a real challenge of a book. It's an intellectual monster, this one. But that is a book that has been challenging my belief systems, poking holes in me.
Great.
And what he's trying to do is look at the substrata beneath different religions, so trying to move beyond the dogma and trying to work out what exactly what messages were to be found which have been lost. So that's been something very interesting for me, and a lot of the things in the book challenge my world view and my understanding.
Brilliant.
But I feel richer for going through it.
That's great. I'll put the link in the show notes for both of those books. So if people want to check them out, they can do so there. So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things. And so we could shine a spotlight on them. And who knows, maybe this year we'll have them on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, the first person that sprung to mind was the person that I mentioned that I often use as my resource.
Yeah.
Before giving a session. She was my first massage teacher.
Yeah.
And she set up the school in Argentina where I studied. She's from Germany. Her name is Ingrid May. And she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. She's one of these people with a very, very open heart. And she just seems to have an endless source of wisdom. She's very much the person that I go to with bigger questions. She's a very good friend of mine, and we talk a lot. And yeah, I feel that she is capable of moving spaces of coherence, spaces where people can drop into a very deep, loving stillness, which is still very human.
Yeah.
You often get people with these spiritual practices that have just done a spiritual bypass and they're kind of non-functioning. Well, she's very functioning and very real life. And at the same time, she manages to bring this very deep playfulness into everything. So she is, probably one of the people that has inspired me the most in life, and still I feel very fortunate to call her my friend.
I appreciate you sharing her with us, because I always love hearing about other people's mentors, coaches, and colleagues that are just running alongside you in this journey of life. So we'll also link up Ingrid so people can check her out as well. Yeah. So Roger, I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing that you're grateful for right here, right now, today?
Oh, I'm grateful that I'm in a house. I'm grateful that there is a wall next to me, a ceiling above me.
Yeah.
I've been living in Argentina for 15 years, in South America for the best part of 16 years. Wow. I went out there a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we decided to move back together with my partner, Ceci. We took the decision, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we only just moved in March.
Mm-hmm.
And since we arrived, or since we left, I think we've been in something like 18 different houses in the space of not very many months. And we've just recently, 2 weeks ago, moved into a house. And I have felt the calm come back into my existence, into my whole body.
Yeah.
It was a great thing to do, but it's a very stressful thing to change continents, it takes a while to move over like that.
Oh, trust me, I know all about it. I moved from Texas to England about 5.5 years ago. I completely know.
Yeah.
So again, people can check you out online at roger-jackson.com. Is there any place in particular on social media that you hang out at? People can connect you there?
Anything I tend to put it on my website, and that's linked straight to my Facebook and my Instagram.
Fabulous.
So either of those two places, if they're going to be in the links, most of my information will come out on there as well.
Great. So his Instagram is Roger Jackson Therapy as well. Okay, my final question for you today is this. And again, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. Someone somewhere, I'm imagining right now, is listening to this episode. She's in the car. She's doing the morning school run. It's been not a great morning. Everything's been high alert, high stress, and she's got a triple latte sitting right next to her as well to get through it. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
This too will pass. I think just recognizing just how dynamic life is, and even in the deepest pits, that will also pass. Just recognizing that, okay, this is just what it is right now. This is going to change soon. So I think if I actually had to whisper, I'd probably whisper something slightly sweeter than that. I'd probably whisper, this too will pass, and you will be able to get through it all.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Roger, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mary.